Part 7 of the Inherited Trauma series, and today we're going to talk about identification and finally rejection. So identification is when a person takes something on from a family member that is generally traumatic and it's not theirs to carry. I'll provide some examples. And identification is not with a parent. It could be with a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle. It could even be with a stillborn or miscarried sibling that came before you. The most important thing to know about identification is that it happens most commonly when the family doesn't have the space to grieve or heal through a trauma that occurred in the lineage. And as you know, in our society, up until pretty much now, we weren't allowed to process our emotions or work through things that were really upsetting or disturbing to ourselves or any of our family members. Just as in the case of stillborn and miscarried babies, our society just expects women to move through the loss of this child without giving it the time and space that's needed for them to truly heal and reconcile whatever's going on within them during this process. Children are always going to carry the unresolved trauma that has not yet been addressed in the family. So in this case, the rainbow baby may identify with the child that passed because the trauma has to go somewhere. When trauma is not relieved in a generation, it will move to the next generation in hopes of being relieved in that generation. Another example of this is when a family member does something that the family deems as unacceptable or harmful, such as if they were a criminal, if they were abusive, if they cheated, if they were an addict, anything that caused the family to disown that one family member. When we take on the identity of that disowned family member, often it is known as atoning for what they did. Another example of this is when an adult's life was lost in a very tragic situation that the family wants to keep hush-hush. Some examples of this are a terminal illness that was devastating for the family to endure, so they don't talk about it. It could be when a family member was murdered, when a life was lost at war or a genocide. We learned about a woman in school who was diagnosed with schizophrenia only to find out that her grandmother passed away during the Holocaust, and she was identified with her grandmother in order to resolve the trauma of her family. As soon as this woman committed to her healing, her schizophrenia symptoms completely dissipated. And I'm not saying that everybody that has schizophrenia is identified. I feel like I need to add that disclaimer. Now we're going to move into the fourth unconscious theme of inherited trauma, which is rejection in part 8.